My name is Karen Skiles, and I'm pleased to be your hostess for today's webinar. We've been delivering our monthly webcations to you since 2007, and we're very happy to see so many of returning guests with us today. Today we're pleased to have Elaine Wong, Process Improvement Manager with Healthcare Service Corporation, to present Establishing a Business Process Group, a practitioner presentation. During the presentation, the information that is presented may raise some questions, or you may be looking for some additional clarification or information. We've scheduled Elaine's time at the end of today's session to answer your questions. So please submit your questions using the chat window that appears on the GoToMeeting box, which is located in the upper right corner of your screen. Just open your chat window by clicking on the plus sign next to the word chat. Just type your question in the chat log section and click the send button. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time during the presentation. We have a large number of attendees for the session, and we have a lot to cover. We will answer as many questions as possible today. If we're unable to respond to each of you today, don't worry, because we'll compile all of the questions and answers from today's presentation in a Q&A report and send you a link by mail to download the report in just a few days. We're ready to get started. For those of you new to ITSM Academy, here's a quick overview. ITSM Academy is a full-service provider of ITSM education. We have trained tens of thousands of students on site across the Americas and in our public training centers in Fort Lauderdale, Dallas, Minneapolis, Phoenix, Reston, Salt Lake City, and Tampa, as well as in our virtual classroom. Now let me present Elaine Wong. Elaine is going to give us some background on her company and herself. Good morning, Elaine.
Hi. Well, I'm thrilled to be invited to present some of the lessons learned for developing our business process practice, and I just want to give you an overview of our company and give you a context from which this journey will begin. So let me go through just a high level what you'll be hearing today. First, I'll give you an overview of our company and where we stand, my background, where I'm situated in the organization, so where our division, what services our division provides, and some of the lessons learned based on my 6 years of experience here at Healthcare Services Corporation. There was sweeping change back in 2008, which those in the United States are aware of, on mandatory health care. And so I've been involved in many projects that are implementing that change as we speak, as well as the HHS Porter, for those who are familiar with that. I can go into a greater detail. As a result, we had a divisional preparedness assessment in order to prepare for the change, and it really rocked our world. So without further ado, let me give you an overview of our company. Healthcare Service Corporation is about 7 years old, and it's the largest customer-owned health insurance company, and actually we grew by one plan as of August the 1st, and that was Blue Cross Blue Shield of Montana. I came to the organization from Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, which owns the license and brand of the of Blue Cross Blue Shield. So to work with the plan was a great opportunity for me to, I guess, see where the rubber hits the road and where it all happens. We're also consisting of many other operating divisions and subsidiaries that work together to offer our customers a holistic view of their wellness and how they can keep that. We are not-for-profit, and this kind of explains what customer-owned means. So I'm not going to read this to you, but really it's a little bit different than not-for-profit. We are owned by our stockholders, so in the event that we exceed a certain profitability, we have actually lowered our benefit rates as a result of that. I don't know the exact figures of that, but I remember when I was at the association and I was able to participate when they had their federal employee programs. Every year they reach out to the association for volunteers to help explain the new changes to the FEP program. And I was thrilled to be involved in a year where we actually said that our benefit payments were reduced from last year. So it's interesting that you can actually see these things happen. We, like other healthcare payers, we currently have an existing membership segregated or segmented into these programs. And it's primarily organized in this fashion in order to provide targeted service to these particular members who participate in these programs. Additionally, we're involved in looking at different ways in which we can integrate the information of our members in order to provide a more targeted approach to what we offer them from an individual and from a small group perspective. And those in the other blue system may already know this and really function in a way in which we can serve our customers the best in our particular region. This particular purpose for HCSC is almost a year old, and frankly, I was surprised at the purpose, and it's really been a thrill and an honor to serve an organization that puts its members first and foremost, and to stand by them, which is an interesting premise. And so throughout the year, our leadership has given us different opportunities in which to volunteer personally, as well as to understand better how our collaboration with each other in our respective functional areas lend themselves to the value stream that we offer our customers. And these are the core values in which we abide by. And so every year we do attest to our different ethical compliance that, and we do this every year, and being an SSO, which is a service and support organization, we try to set an example. Okay, let's go on. Now this is an interesting situation where there are many, many, many people who have had no health insurance. And so fairly recently in the last couple of months, we have been, one of the programs that we have launched at HCSC is, what do you do when people ask you, well, can you make a recommendation about what I should know about health insurance when it's available to me on the exchange, or explaining what the exchange is, or explaining what health insurance is. So interestingly enough, we have put together by plan, because there are differences, if you don't already know this, there are different Department of Insurance by state, so it's almost as if it were by country, where there are different requirements that each of the states legislate. And so the federal government does provide broad guidelines and some directives, but it's written in such a way, although as convoluted as you may think, no more convoluted than we have in each of the states or local municipalities. So it's really designed in order for states to meet the needs of those who they serve. And democracy is a benefit, but there are a lot of costs to that in terms of your participations and contributions. Okay, so why should I be talking to you? Well, I've had a pretty eclectic background. Actually, I started out as a dancer and actress, and actress later in life. But I always loved marketing. Actually, marketing was my passion before I even got into acting. And so, as you can see from my background, it's pretty tangential. But the primary, I guess, the impetus is on, looking at the truth of the information that you're seeing, as well as being able to validate that with those who are actually performing those activities. And that's no matter in what arena, what industry, or what area you have. You know excellence when you see it, and you know subject matter expertise when you see it, and it doesn't matter. Over time, you understand, what you can believe and what you can't believe. So I'm a firm believer in market research, doing my homework, as well as listening to participants when they're telling you stories and when they're telling you stories. All right. Let me pause for a second. Okay. Now, one of the things I wanted to provide you was the context from which I'm speaking about a business process practice and trying to create a process group. Where I've sit for the last 6 years and where I sit now is as a department of internal consultants, and this is what we provide, a whole host of different things. We used to be situated with strategy, directly with strategy, which is probably an ideal place to be. But as our organization has grown, that has been, that's no longer the case. However, I think that we have a lot of other competencies and capabilities that have grown across the organization, and believe me, we're running as fast as we can to keep up. My colleagues and I come from a whole host of different expertise in industries, and so it is interesting discussing what standards you're talking about, where you got your Six Sigma black belt. Okay, we did it here at Motorola this way. What do you do that way? And by the way, our senior director is from Motorola, and a few of my colleagues are from Motorola, so it's been a lot of fun just talking about differences between organizations. And over the course of our facilitation, we do a lot of process flow. Typically, they come to us because we're the process improvement people. And here are some of the things that we've learned, and believe me, these do translate themselves to any business process creation or practice. These are things that keep coming up over and over again. One of the things that I think is real important is that process doesn't happen without people. And unfortunately, sometimes information and technology seem to drive a lot of that. There's a lot of knowledge that people have that can't be automated or computerized. And the whole idea that people can be replaced is probably not a good change management strategy. It's probably better to look at change as, what about the process that we have to change, and engaging those people who are the subject matter experts around that process to help initiate the change, and I know this is an old word, but empower them to change, but also inform and measure that. And so I'm a big proponent of, you don't know what to improve unless you measure it, because then you don't know if you actually are improving the right thing. The other thing that is a very important process is, okay, what process are you looking at? And typically, you're not going to be working with one functional area. You're typically going to be looking at processes that span multiple areas, cross-matrixed areas, and sometimes no process owner, meaning no process owner of that value stream, that you are having a problem. Also, typically we are brought in when there are no processes there that are developed, and so it's very difficult to develop processes when you're trying to improve them and when solutions have been put forward to you without even evaluating what the problem is. And so as internal consultants, we run into this quite a bit because there isn't any business process management group that manages an enterprise, meaning there's consistency, there are standards, and that there is an enterprise approach to our processes, and they're generalized enough so that you can reuse them. Additionally, looking at whether each process adds value. So one of the things that we do in our facilitation, we do Gemba, and we all have a whole set of tool sets that we use, and this might be familiar to those who are in Six Sigma. We do observation, so we take documentation on procedures, we take a look at what they've done, and it doesn't happen that way. We observe them get up and walk across the room or go over there and look at that system when there's nothing on the procedure document that says from 1 to 2 all that stuff happens. So then we ask those questions. Why do you do that? What is it for? Why isn't your system able to handle that for you? And so it brings up a whole host of questions and problems and a variety of things. And it's a real challenge to put their perspective into a more statistically significant arena without measuring, without doing a Gemba on a correct number of observations. We usually don't have the time to do that. It would be helpful to do that, but we know that getting a subject matter expert time for an hour is a gift because they have their real work to do. They have their own volumes that they have to be accounted for. So we try to do as much as possible when we're with them, and we do a lot of homework prior to that. And lastly, the two last, they're not bullet points, but the two general observations and lessons learned is that these processes aren't measured. And as a result, it's very difficult to, number one, know where change is going to impact them, knowing whether there are skills that need to be addressed in order to make the process execution of this change viable and sustainable. A lot of times that the people who are performing the activities don't own the process because they, what I mean by process ownership, that means that you're clearly responsible for all aspects of it. So that means measurements, reporting, cycle time, and the ability to change them when you need to. And that's really the big, it's very difficult in a big organization of 19,500 people across 5 different states, actually more than 5 states if you include all our subsidiaries that we exchange information with, to rapidly make these changes. And so typically the ability to change within a process is somewhat constrained for some of those reasons. Additionally, we are also we help the businesses develop benefits metrics and a model by which when they are proposing when they have a funding request for a project that they want to entertain, there's a whole process by which they do that in front of our business review committee, and that's senior leaderships who look at the whole host of about 1,400 projects across the board in a variety of rankings, you know, enterprise-wide, compliance, regulations, etc. You know it, you name it. So what happens is this process of Tier 1 through 4 projects, the Tier 1 and 2 are the multi-dollar and multi-organizational and area impacting, or like with ACA, with the Affordable Care Act, a lot of those regulations are coming down from the government. So for example, the Human and Health Services portal by which we submit benefit rates and plans for small groups and individuals to the exchange are information that we have to be able to transmit in a concise, accurate, and complete way. I happen to work on a project by which it was an opportunity that I was given to be able to perform the or model the process of the end-to-end, meaning when HHSS sends a notification to healthcare, we receive it, and then what do we do? All the way through the attestation of the information that we're submitting to the government. And there were no processes and there were no procedures, and they were able to, I believe for about a year and a half, were able to sustain it with a small core group of people. But over time they realized that due to some errors that occurred in the process, our group, Center for Process Excellence, was brought in, and I was brought in to help them support their end-to-end value stream, because I had just been on a similar project for the ERISA 5500 for the 2009 change in the reporting, where there was an additional reporting that we had to do for our companies, and the companies had to submit that to the government on behalf of ERISA. So that was a challenge, and so as a result, ideally, the idea is that we should be able to provide that information and provide that kind of direction and guidance before a process is being introduced, or when a new process is being introduced, instead of after the fact. So another engagement they do that's one of our big big chunk of time that we have and an expertise that we have and no one else does is a process assessment. And that means that we go in and do a deep dive into an organization, and typically for an operational issue that they have. So we look at their core operations and try to see what the real problems are. And there are a couple things that besides too few problem statements being developed, sometimes there's a problem statement, and then when we go in, that's really not the problem. That's happened to me, I can say, about 40% of the time of all projects that I've ever been in. typically projects are way too narrow in focus. So for example, we'll go in and there are no current state process models. There are no current state maps. We have a bunch of desktop level procedures that give us an idea of how their operations are run. And so we typically do, and what from what I've learned at Motorola, is reverse engineer. So we deconstruct, actually, I use this technique. I deconstruct and have to take the minutia and then bring it up a level and then bring it up a level to a level of abstraction so that most parties can agree about what we're talking about. And something that I realized that I didn't put on here was language and vocabulary are extremely important. Okay, so when we're dealing with not just an area, but you have to remember that we have now 5 plans. When we had 4 plans, that was even a challenge. So let me do a time check. Okay, it's about 10:30. I was involved in a benefit coding process assessment, and this is for Oklahoma, New Mexico, Texas, and Illinois. And without going into a great deal of detail, we actually were able to go on site and look at the documentation that each of the plans had developed, do a process mapping without any preconceived notions, and but using our standard framework that we are engaged in 2008. And interestingly enough, the largest part of the exercise was probably 3 different things. One was vocabulary. I would say 20% of the time was spent trying to figure out what you mean by that. So for example, one state would call a small group 5 to 10, and another plan would call small group 1 through 100. And so each of the plans had a different, they used small group, but what that meant was different. We had other situations where, I can't recall, it's been a while, but situations where they would call a benefit contract or a benefit matrix a certain entity, whereas others would call another document that they had something different, but it contained very similar things. And by that I did, I collected all of the different files that each of the groups contained, and I did an analysis of all the files. And they had no less than 17 different spreadsheets that they used throughout their process, meaning between the time they received an account to code to the time they completed testing. They had a sign-off from the testers to say they could release those benefits to have a claim adjudicated. And as a result of our process assessment, they were able to not only summarize or consolidate all their documentation, meaning that with some support and with a lot of coaching and mentoring, able to look at the way in which their documentations were set up and be able to provide them guidance on how to structure their content management. Additionally, we looked at with the different work groups and how to sustain those type of activities so that there was a rotating group where each group would have a roll-off of individuals, and each individual would be able to not only participate in a work group but also lead a work group, so that we would have a lot of cross-training. And then additionally, a lot of the focus on the process maps were specificity and not really modeling. And so this is the first, I believe, the first time that they came to a situation where the information was more generalized for their reuse. So, for example, we chunked it out. Chunking means that you declare what the parent process is, and then you then well, actually, it's harder than that. You look at the smaller, all the little minutia, and then you chunk it up into what are the things that are most like each other before you hand off. And so there's a lot of discussion about handoffs, information that's required, systems that are accessed to move to the next process, and what are the constraints and what are the rules. I'm spending a lot of time in this area because they're going to be repeated. Roles are not generalized. So, for example, you'll have a lot of process maps that are specific to an individual, and no one else does this. So one of the other things that this calls to attention is that resources and staffing, because we also work with our finance group for staffing models. And that speaks to the identification of skills and where a particular skills is not transferable to someone else because there wasn't any accommodation in calling out the importance of this process or any cross-training. Okay. So here's the first polling question. I'd like to know, where are you situated in your company? Business area, IT area, or consultant? So if you would complete that, please. Poll open. Organizer must close poll.
I have it. I have it, Elaine. I'm
Okay.
poll for you.
Right. Sorry.
I have it. Let's see. Let's see what areas they are from today. Give them a couple more minutes, a couple more seconds. You just make your selection. Got about 70% voted so far. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. Okay. So, Elaine, we've got 67% are in IT, 24% consultants, and 9% in the business area.
Okay, yay, business! No, I'm just kidding. All right, great. Well, now I know how to proceed here. Okay, so shall I go forward?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, let's go on. Okay. All right, all you IT people, I know you're waiting to hear all the rest of this stuff. Okay, so this is all about what happened in 2008, how we adjusted for this. And so we went, holy camole, how are we going to adjust to all of this? Because our entire business and operating models just got shook up. We had to change the way we did business to accommodate retail. And I'm from a retail business, retail background. And also, some of the things I also did was I got my MBA in market research. And that degree is no longer given because you do programming, you do mainframe. And I did a stint as an intern at Leo Burnett where I actually worked on the first Sony style and got to work and really saw some great database marketing and all the millions of information. And so that was really a fun thing. So we got our worlds rocked, and this is what we were assessed at. So the Center for Process Excellence, we were never, we were process excellence, but we're not a BPM practice. Huge difference. So at the point of the evaluation, that's where we were, and that's where we needed to get. Okay. So here's another polling question. Where do you think your organization is based on the Gartner BPM model? And maybe I should go back one so you can see where it's at. Okay. So.
And I'm going to bring that poll up for them so they can answer, Elaine.
Okay. So really, the Gartner BPM. Let me let you know that it's very similar to CMMI and other types of 5-point scales of maturity. So if you're familiar with CMMI, you've seen this.
We've got about 45% voted, so I'm just waiting a couple of more,
Okay.
more seconds. See if we can get the majority of the audience. Oh yeah, it's climbing, Elaine.
Okay.
They're responding.
Now that they know what CMMI is, right?
Yes. And I'd like to thank you all for providing this information to help Elaine understand the audience today. Okay, we're going to close the poll. And here are the results. So we've got a tie at 31% at level 1, 1 to 1.5, and greater than 1.5 to 2. There's the tie.
Ooh.
And then 19% not even on the graph.
Okay.
And then the other two greater than 2.0 to 2.5 and greater than 2.5 to 3.0 is both 10%. Okay.
Oh. I want to talk to those people. They should be giving this presentation.
I'm sure they're going to have some good questions for you.
Oh, I hope so.
Okay, back to your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Well, interesting. Okay. Well, I'm going to just skip this slide. There are just bunches of you. 10% of you are way beyond that. But this, if you've already downloaded the, it's 17, page 17, and it's this is what we were chartered to do. And you know, it's illustrative, and it was proprietary at the time. It's not proprietary now. It kind of gives us an idea of where we should be going. And really, ideally, I learned that we needed the process information in order for our enterprise process management office to be able to know the major stakeholders that they needed to invite and get a better understanding of what the project was about from a process perspective. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so where the heck do we go from here? So let me see. Oh, bummer. Can I go back? Let me see. Yes, I can go back. Okay, so I'm going to have to do something. All right, because I need to show that. Okay, so basically, my background is in market research, and my experience as a Motorola as an operational business manager, I was responsible for explaining the business and technology business interplay across 28 different transit systems for an automatic fare collection system using smart card technology. And at the time, this is 2000, with no 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Okay, so now we have smart cards, right? People know what smartphones are. But at the time, it was a nascent technology. And the experiences of that really gave me a lot of perspective. Actually, at the time, it was my first experience with UML. I was able to do only 200 UML models to express the business operations on the back end as well as the front end. And so when I was given this challenge to develop a business process group or actually, it was to group all of our business processes into an order in order to enable our project and other customers to see what we've done, and it wasn't organized that way. And so as a result, I decided to go from the very beginning and say, well, what the heck do we need? So I investigated those items, with the exception of, actually, I didn't really want to talk about, talk too much about business capabilities development or business architecture, but you all might be interested, and I don't have any slides on this, but we have an enterprise architecture systems solutions group, as well as an application management group, because we have a gazillion different applications out there, and so we're planning our future next generation systems, and as a result, there's a lot of things that are moving at the same time we have to maintain, so it's a really interesting dynamic. But our collaboration together was to build business capabilities and what is business architecture, and so I had an opportunity of learning a lot about that, and so it was to be able to say, what are we capable of doing? And then the business process really tells us how we do it. Okay, so as a result, we investigated there was a lot of investigation around what meta models are going to use. We're going to use Archimate. Okay, you use Archimate. Okay, we're going to use business. We're going to use the Malik and OMG. So this is just my thing, my artistic expression on what are all the different organizations that we're going to look at. You know, OMG you're probably familiar with. Accord is an organization that has developed standards within the insurance industry, but it's more towards property and liability. There are some that are very apropos to claims inquiry, but not quite a good fit for us for healthcare and wellness delivery. I looked at, of course, ISO from my background in Motorola. I participated in ISO standards, and so as a result of some, I know nothing. Just going and trying to get a fresh look at what was going on. I'll kind of look at the federal enterprise architecture standards. Actually, in 2009. In 2009, we had an enterprise-wide evaluation by consultant, and we were able to develop different business reference models as a result of that, and so that laid some groundwork to some of the work that we're doing now, but of course some of that has changed, and some of the relationships of our groups have been reorganized to facilitate more of a common approach. For example, our organization within our marketing and sales group we've been able to streamline some of those activities by bringing some of the hierarchy in place to enable greater transparency and discussion across the groups. Okay, so.
Excuse me, Elaine.
Yes.
Hi, Elaine. It's Karen. I just wanted to just give you a time check and let you know we've got about 15 minutes left for the presentation.
Okay. Thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that I think is real important is the whole abstraction of concepts that we need to get to, because everybody wants to dive deep, right? Everyone wants to go to, what is that field? Where is it going? Okay, so before we want to go there, we want to really frame out, well, where do you sit in the organization? Why do you need it? And what value are you giving to the customer? And actually, being from the process side, value streams are really important. It's really what your customer values. They really don't care, and we shouldn't have them care on how we deliver their service. They just want to know it's there when they need it and that you respond quickly, right? And that's for everything. And these kinds of maps will probably speak to this audience a little bit better on relationships, but it's exactly the same as the model you just saw. So see how different perspectives help you get an idea of how to respond. So now we come to the next polling question. And I'm really interested in knowing how you're going to respond to this one. So why use meta models at all? Okay, so you have 3 choices, and so please participate. Thank you.
Right. I had to modify that just a little bit, Elaine, because it was because of the length that I had. But the first one is are the meta models, are they tools to generalize, characterize, or classify things and their relationships to others? Are they cool but sometimes confusing to describe or define? Are they used to define or describe the way in which entities will behave based upon their characteristics and their relationship to other entities? If you could make your selections, that would be wonderful. And I see people they're starting to vote on that one. This is good.
All right.
Okay, we'll give them a couple more seconds, Elaine, to see.
Okay, great.
And, okay, and I'm going to close the poll. Okay, so we have 47% they use to define or describe ways in which the entities behave. And then a tie at 26% for tools to generalize and characterize or classify, and cool but sometimes confusing to describe. What do you make of that?
I think that's great. Am I supposed to give answers? I'm not sure.
Well, yes. I mean, what was the purpose of asking that question?
Well, the purpose of answering this question was just to get some feedback on what, I mean, actually, I think that they are all pretty much, that was kind of one of the trick questions, but those have all been my experiences. So for one, meta models, once you say meta, people, their eyes glaze and roll up into their heads because you're talking Greek. Secondly, sometimes when we discuss, and believe me, I am guilty of this, where I inundate people with too much detail, and I lose sight of the fact that I need to communicate to them, and I need information from them, or some approval, or some consensus, and I am giving them information that they're not able to consume. It's too much. They don't even like the way it tastes. And really, a meta model can be described in many different ways. And so you all can look it up, but basically they're used, we're using them to be able to further abstract and be able to adhere to a standard that is outside our organization. Okay, so that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Okay. That's essentially really what actually I'd like to say it's not just a system, because system's too much like application. System is too much like when I'm talking to my customers. Okay, so bear with me, but when you say ecosystem, though, an ecosystem means that there's some reliance on each other, cooperation. There may be some competition, true, but any ecosystem, as you all know, like swamps have an ecosystem. In Louisiana, that whole ecosystem was damaged by the spill that occurred several years ago. Our ecosystem, our world ecosystem, is being compromised in one way or another, because there may not be adaptation and flexibility amongst those within that ecosystem. And so a definition of a business ecosystem is just a network of organizations, government, suppliers, distributors, who are delivering a specific product or service through both competition and cooperation. So it means that you affect somebody or something else, and you are affected by them. So that's why I think that pictures really do serve a great deal of purpose with our business customers, as well as simplifying and facilitating communication. But it also points out and brings a level of extraction and a framework by which to make discussion. Okay. Here's another polling question. So since many of you are from IT, what is a business model? And this has a...
See what our IT group thinks. Is it a simple way of explaining what you provide customers? Is it an illustration of the way that you do business? Or is it a way you want to look when you leave the house? Please make your selection. And then we've got about 4 more minutes left for the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, they're answering this one quickly.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. No one wants to look that way when they leave the house.
Oh, thank you for being honest. Okay.
78%, it's an illustration of the way you do business, and 22% a simple way of explaining what you provide customers.
Okay, so the first one is really the answer. The way you do business may not be ethical, and the way you do business may not be sustainable. So those are two large, and it has to be, what you provide needs to be priced so that you can sustain yourself. And if business wants to subsist, as any entity wants to subsist, you have to feed it, nurture it, and provide it the means to continue to live. It doesn't mean it needs to grow. It needs to live upon the premise of which it is based. So our mission statement is, or our purpose is to, you know, we're there for our members through thick and thin, through wellness or health, illness, but, and I'm massacring that. Let me go back. We stand behind to do everything in our power to stand with our members in sickness and in health. Okay, so those are tall words, meaning that we have to not only stand by them, we want to keep our members, but we need to continue to profit at enough level in order to sustain it so that we can continue to have that relationship. Okay, so, all right. So I won't go through that. We decided that we were going to use the APQC process classification, and you can read about that organization. I've only got 4 minutes. And this is how it's structured. Here are the process levels. This is a version 6. I just checked it the other day, but it's constantly renewing. This is available information, and the presentation gives you links, so if you want more detail, you can. Pretty much structured it so that we could, and actually if you look at this structure, we have it in quicker, just a tool. We're going to be standardizing how people name their projects so we can find stuff easily. And what we're doing is we're looking at all of our past projects since 2007. and being able to categorize them in a way in which we can find past projects to leverage past information, as well as be able to look at the process maps. Now, value streams, this is probably most important because that should drive your whole business. Is what are you there for? Product or services? And so these are the value streams that we have. For example, for those who are health payers, when can I get my benefit card? You know, what's covered, and how can I find a provider? So we should have value streams from end to end on how that process run, from cycle times, all the groups, and the processes to make that happen. And these are the lessons learned. So, for example, and believe me, this is a journey. These are the 4 top items that translate to not only our process improvement areas, but into developing a business process practice, meaning standardizations, being able to reuse process flows, establishing an intake process. This is near and dear to my heart because customers say, I only want you to do this, when in fact there are probably some larger issues. In fact, if we do solve this one problem, there's not enough visibility into the impact that that change may have on a whole host of other areas. And it's not really good to request things by emails. You need to put it in a project plan. You need to put it on a task list so there are accountability. Okay, so let's leave it up to questions. The journey continues.
The journey does continue. That is a long journey, Elaine.
It's not
a long journey for that. That's a big organization.
Huge.
First of all, I would like to thank you for spending your time with us this morning and giving us all of your knowledge based on what your journey has entailed up to this point. So thank you so much for that. And I do have some questions for you, but just before we get started on the questions, I just wanted to remind everybody that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, September 19th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And our presenter will be ITSM Academy's Jane Grohl. And Jane's presentation is titled The IT Culture Cocktail Party. And this presentation is about how organizational culture plays a major role in adopting and adapting service management processes. And given the uptake of multiple frameworks, standards, and practices, IT has actually evolved into a multicultural society, each with its own evangelists and detractors. This presentation will provide the ingredients for a potent IT culture cocktail using DevOps as the mixer. So come and join the party and become an IT culture mixologist next month. We look forward to that. Now some questions for you, Elaine.
Oh, boy.
Are you ready? Okay, here you go. This one is from Janie, and the question is, can you please explain what a business meta model is?
Okay. Simply, if you're building a building, you need to have blueprints by which everyone knows what they need to do. So, for example, if you go into a situation where, let's build a house, let's map a process, it's not quite that easy. But a meta model, what it does is it provides some of the overarching rules by which you're going to play, you're going to communicate, and the relationships by which you all agree that they have. So, for example, a business, let me go back to a meta model. Okay, so this one's a good one. Business units need to express and be capable of providing a function. See, they're responsible for a function. You have to agree on that. Are they responsible? Oh, no. No, they really don't have to be responsible for it. So the meta model sets those rules by which the business will conduct itself. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Elaine. If not, Jamie will chat back in again and ask for clarification, but I think you have. And I have a question from Matt, and Matt is saying, do you feel that your business process efforts have improved the alignment and communication between the business and IT?
Business and IT, that's a real interesting one. Okay, yes. In fact, there's something that I didn't elaborate on, but the enterprise architects and strategic solution architecture, and the application management group for strategy, and CPE, although I think we're going to be morphing into more of a BPM, a bona fide business process group. We have collaborated on being able to share information on and be able to agree upon, although not finalized, on business capability. And what we've done is done an RFP to bring the tool True, T-R-O-U-X, True, which will enable us to look at our organization holistically, put in project information, business strategy, our business portfolio, and our IT portfolio into the tool so that we can gain a perspective across the enterprise. So process is a huge component of that we're going to be using APQC to use the framework in True, and then we're going to mirror that in a BPMS suite when we get a tool where we're going to put this information in. We're going to have some stabilized high-level process level 1 and 2 in True, and it will be mirrored also in our BPMS suite. And then in the suite, we will actually get into the detail. So, for example, that can map to information systems. I don't believe we're going to we're going to integrate that with business rules. That's actually in the business rules engine somewhere. So yes, our collaboration is much more robust, and we're talking to each other. So yes, it's all good.
Good. Glad to hear that. Thank you. And I have one more question for you today, Elaine, and this is from Allison, and she is asking, can you again describe what, in quotes, chunky means? It was something about a parent process.
Ah, okay. All right. In Lean, in process improvement, there is a methodology called Lean, and it was developed. I won't go into the details, but chunking is just a term vocabulary is really important. So I apologize for not putting that in a glossary. I do have a glossary I can circulate to the team that has, to this organization, that has some of the terminology that I'm going to be helping to develop a webinar for our in-house group to know what these terms are. So it will acquaint our business owners with that. But chunking means, okay, so for example, it's just like if you went into a closet and you're trying to organize your closet because you can't find anything. Okay, so what you do is you say, oh, I'm going to chunk my socks. So what you're going to have to do is look for all your socks. Okay, this is a little bit different. The chunking here is you have to understand which processes are naturally classified or categorized together. So for example, some activity that may be way over there really kind of belong to this other group of processes. And so when we chunk out different groups, it becomes apparent, it becomes very clear where a process needs to have a parent and called by that parent name, because they're very similar, they require different information, they're chronologically aligned, it has dependencies that are are not irrevocable, inextricably bound. So when you chunk something, that means that when you're doing modeling, right, when you decompose something, you can click on, you know, a parent, and then boom, it explodes into more little babies. And then, but those babies it's like a genealogy chart, put it that way, that you can see the natural alignment of the processes. Okay, I hope I answered that question.
Yes, and I have a question for you from Ibis. She was chatting with us a little bit earlier. She is not in the business IT or consultant area per se. Mm-hmm. She's in HR.
Oh.
And her question, yes. So, and her question is, how can we as organizational development consultants, as HR reps, start the journey of selling the idea to top management and to the whole organization of the need for a process improvement or process excellence group? Do you have any thoughts on that for her?
Oh my gosh, I could go on and on and on, because actually one of my major customers is HR and service technology. So for example, it's onboarding. So when we onboard somebody, we need to get them onboarded. Equipment, location, passes, you name it, right? And so I worked on some major projects. In fact, I have a presentation next week on we need a service-oriented type of delivery system for onboarding. We don't have them, actually. They're all, you need a phone, you request a phone. You need a computer, you request a computer, and that's crazy. So from an HR perspective, how do you sell that? The way you sell it is to take a major value that has constraints to it, and you develop big level processes where you identify the areas that own those processes, functional areas, and then you say, I don't know where to improve the process. We need a process assessment to understand the dependencies of the organizations, the information that's required, the suppliers' inputs, processes that transform them, and the outputs that you need. That's our typical SIPOC, which, by the way, is another Six Sigma tool. So we use these tools to give everybody a framework by which you need the whole perspective of the different stakeholders who contribute to the process of this value you want to add to your customer. So I hope that helps. We could talk offline. I mean, we could talk offline, and I could definitely answer some other questions more specific. So I'd be happy to.
Oh, good. Okay. So there's an offer for you. And thank you, Elaine. That is all of the questions that we have for today. I do have a lot of comments being chatted in, though. Thank you so much, Elaine. Great presentation, very informative. So thank you very much for that, and again for spending time with us today, Elaine.
Well, I appreciate it, and I hope a return visit to help let you know what progress has taken place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just as a reminder, our next webinar again is scheduled for Thursday, September 19th at 11. And our presenter will be ITSM Academy's Jane Grove, and Jane is presenting the IT Culture Cocktail Party. So and again, just a brief description of that, just a presentation about how organizational culture plays a major role in adopting and adapting service management processes. And given the uptake of multiple frameworks, standards, and practices, IT has actually evolved into a multicultural society, each with its evangelists and detractors. This presentation provides the ingredients for a potent IT culture cocktail using DevOps as the mixer. So please come and join the party, and we'll all become IT culture mixologists. We hope you've enjoyed today's presentation, and we look forward to seeing you next month. And I know most of you have requested pre-registration for the next webinar. If so, you'll receive a confirmation by email. For those of you that haven't requested pre-registration, we will send you an invitation for the next webinar. And as you log out, please just take a minute to complete the post-webinar survey. Your feedback is very important to us. And again, thank you for joining us today, and everybody have a wonderful day. And thank you again, Elaine. You have a great day.